Georgia judge struck down the 6-week abortion ban on Monday, allowing the procedure to be formed beyond that limit. The state's abortion law had gone into effect in 2022. Fulton County Superior Court Judge Robert McBurney wrote that the ban violated Georgia's constitution, state constitution, writing in his order, quote, "Liberty in Georgia includes in its meaning, in its protections, and in its bundle of rights, the power of a woman to control her own body, to decide what happens to it, and in it, and to reject state interference with her healthcare choices." Now, in contrast to the 6-week ban, McBurney's ruling would allow abortions through at least 20 weeks of pregnancy.
Georgia's ban was part of a cadre of bans that went into effect after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in 2022, ending the national right to abortion. 13 states now ban or severely restrict the procedure at early stages of pregnancy, with some exceptions. Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr vowed to appeal McBurney's decision to the state Supreme Court. McBurney's order comes after 2 moms died in connection with the abortion restriction. His decision has been applauded. Writer Jessica Valenti posted, quote, "A Georgia judge has struck down the state's 6-week abortion ban. In an absolutely epic ruling, Fulton County Judge Robert McNerby didn't just repeal the law, but eviscerated it as forcing women to be, quote, human incubators." Trans activist Aaron retweeted, incredible news. Georgia's 6-week abortion ban has been ruled unconstitutional under state law. Everybody deserves the right to bodily autonomy.
Yeah, look, I personally feel that 6 weeks is too early to have an abortion ban in place. I would not be in favor of such a policy. Now, if the voters in a state or their representatives in a state legislature feel otherwise, I don't know that I wouldn't vote that way, but it's a democracy and the state gets to choose what the abortion policy is. Something, more along the lines of 15 weeks with some medical exceptions, depending on the circumstance, is more along the lines of what I support, and I think where most Americans are. I think most Americans want abortion to be safe, legal, and rare, want other options to be available, want birth control to be more widely available so that people can make responsible choices for themselves and not end up in a situation where they even need an abortion. But yes, that it should be a valid option in some cases. But we should really try to limit limit it via ways other than forbidding it or making it criminal, because that has all sorts of bad side effects too. People still will seek the procedure. I understand that, and then have it done in unsafe settings. I take that seriously, but we should try to find alternative methods for people to have more control over their lives and their family planning than abortion, because it is an unpleasant procedure, and many Americans, not a majority of them, but many of them feel like it is harming a human life, particularly as it goes on. I think that argument, again, in the very early stages of the pregnancy is not so compelling, but by the end of a pregnancy, the entity inside you is basically indistinguishable from a human child, and then I do think deserves certain protections.
And the reality is that's almost the majority of abortions or medical care in some cases are because there's some sort of medical risk
Sure.
to the mother, to the baby, to both. And that is essentially what this judge is saying is, women cannot just be incubators. You have to give them bodily autonomy in many instances, as these 2 mothers who died, to protect themselves. If you have an ectopic pregnancy, under a lot of these restrictive laws that have been passed in states, under an ectopic pregnancy, the woman's life is at risk, and the baby's life, it may not go on, and most likely will not go on. So if you can't get an abortion in that kind of situation, that's ridiculous. That's actually oppressing women. So I commend this decision. 2/3 of Georgia voters, after Roe v. Wade was repealed, said that they were in favor of abortion in Roe v. Wade. So it does seem like the voters of Georgia do believe in this, and it's going to be at a 22-week mark now, which is still, by the way, you still have abortion laws on the book. It's not like suddenly anybody can have an abortion whenever they want. It's just not as restrictive as the previous law was. And, I commend them. And this is going to be a hot button issue in this election. Kamala Harris is going state to state right now, campaigning on a bus tour, talking about what's at risk for women's lives. And as we know, this isn't just a women's issue, but women are more likely to be pro-choice, and they're more likely to turn up and vote. They're much more a significant voting population, not just the fact that there's more of them, but they're more reliable to vote.
Yes, I should note that my understanding from talking with pro-life supporters, including Amber, who's a host on the show, she says that pro-life people obviously believe that in the case of an ectopic pregnancy or a health risk to the mom, in some cases, as you say, in those cases, there's already a substantial risk to the fetus as well. That then it should not. They're not trying to criminalize that. It's being interpreted that way by some doctors, I suppose, and is being made. They feel like they're at legal risk because of the state of the law. But pro-life people say they're not actually interested in banning that.
Well, some pro-life people. There's all shades of pro-life, and I think many use different excuses to suit their narrative, especially in places like Texas, where now the state can come after a doctor. And keep in mind, I mean, this could be a lawmaker who is making a claim against a doctor. So that's legal fees, potentially shutting down a clinic, the license. I mean, there's so much more at stake when you have several of these laws on the books that go after really the ecosystem of supporting women's health. I mean, they also shut down women's health clinics in Texas and in other states like Arizona. So now the women's health clinics that exist in some of these communities are religious, and they're not providing all the same services that you would normally get when you go to a women's health clinic. So it's ridiculous. It's a far right-wing agenda item, and it's based in religion that does not represent the majority of this country's beliefs, does not represent the majority of people who abide by any faith's beliefs. It is an extremist view that has taken over many of our legislatures to, in my opinion, oppress women. Just as simple as that. I know that's not what you want to do. I'm just saying some folks are using this as an opportunity and will flip the narrative and come up with all these excuses. And at the end of the day,
I know a lot of pro-life people, and in fact, I know some pro-life people who are not particularly religious. The argument is not, well, if this is just, I would obviously reject it if this was just the belief system of a religion, and that should not be enshrined into law. But you can construct an argument, and again, the argument is that some rights belong to the preborn baby, the fetus, and you can't, you can talk about bodily autonomy, but I don't have the right to use my bodily autonomy to engage in force or harm to another living entity. So it's really an argument over to what rights do we give to this, I keep using the word entity because I don't think it's a living, breathing human being, right, but it's also not just a clump of cells. We give, again, there are these gray zones, right? Children have some rights, but not as many rights as adults. Animals have some rights. You can't just go around murdering Springfield or anywhere else, people's pets, because we have protections for, pets can't vote. They don't have all the same rights as human beings, but they have some rights not to be horrifically mutilated and injured. They're animal cruelty laws. So we do, as a society, determine, sorry, that violates your bodily autonomy, but there are some limits on what you are allowed to do. So I see it similarly to that. It's not a religious argument. It's just there's a place where there's a trade-off between your right to do this and the right of the being not to be harmed.
Well, that's why when I say religious, it is a lot of these religious groups, going back to the Christian Coalition in the 80s, that were pushing for these really oppressive abortion laws because they had a different interpretation of when the fetus was life. I mean, if it was up to them, it would be the moment the couple got in bed or whatever. I mean, it's why they're against IVF. I mean, I have a bunch of cells in Greece right now. Yeah. I froze my eggs, and that's wild. I mean, Greece is, where I have my frozen eggs, is a culturally conservative religious country, and they don't even see it the way that J.D. Vance sees it. It's wild to see how conservative our country has gotten, where even in more conservative countries around the world, whether it's South America, they're moving forward on these laws and these issues, including abortion, in many countries in South America, Catholic countries, and yet our country is going backwards.
These countries do prohibit abortion, though, after
Mexico
they don't prohibit. They prohibit abortion again after the 14 to 16 week mark, right? France has that policy.
But
abortion is prohibited. You're right. You can go in, get your excellent government health care, whatever that progressives love in France. You can get your abortion up until I think it's 15 weeks. And then you can't anymore. So they do put some limit on it.
But this is okay.
And I think that's fine. I think most people think that's fine.
What France doesn't have is a lobby that is lobbying their lawmakers to just keep going. It's not that the majority of abortions...
What, to keep going both ways, right? We're talking about 20 weeks now in Georgia.
The majority of abortions are not occurring after 15 weeks. And if they are, it's when the woman's life is at risk or the baby, both lives are at risk. That's what's happening after 15, 20 weeks. it's not in rape and incest. These situations where, especially if you start shutting down clinics and the laws are more restrictive, it's going to take a longer period of time for some women to get abortions if they can't get appointments, as we heard during the DNC. People who try to get appointments, they first can't get an appointment at the clinic, it takes 4 weeks. Then the next appointment for an abortion is another 4 weeks later, and suddenly you're past the deadline. So this is all very complicated, but it is also very strategic. And that is what the far right is doing, is they're weaponizing different laws, shutting off clinics, not funding them with the state legislatures, making it so that the state can go after a doctor if they perform an abortion or a certain type of abortion after a certain period, making it so that you can't get to the clinics and set appointments up so that now it's past 15 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever, 6 weeks in the case of Georgia, which is ridiculous because many women don't even know they're pregnant at 6 weeks.
6 weeks, I agree. 6 weeks is too soon, but after like 12 or 14 weeks, in my book, no questions asked up until that point. And then but then after that, it should be a really exceptional case. It should involve a health risk or something like that. That will be my policy, and I think that's where the majority of the American people are.
What
and
if
that
you
is
can't get an
akin to other.
What if you can't get an appointment? I mean, that's what's happening. When you don't have clinics open, now...
Well, I'm not for shutting down clinics or doing anything of the sort. Yeah, you should be able to get an appointment. I'm for people, again, offering this service in that time window, and it's not any of my business or the state's business, and that's fine.
Well, there we go. We solved it.
I guess so.
Complicated issue.
A lot more coming up on Rising. Stay tuned. More right after this.